welcome. Good afternoon. Before we begin learning about some of your experiences with power, could you just go ahead and briefly introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about what interests you in this conversation?
So my name is Janet Forelo, and I'm a social worker. And when I visited the library booth at one of the many local events I attended, I saw this and it jumped out at me because being a woman and coming into my own power has been a lifelong struggle, even if I didn't have a name for it before. So that's why I wanted to take this opportunity.
So what does power mean to you? How would you define having power or using power if you had to boil that down for us?
So for me, it comes from an article that a friend shared with me with a speaker named Mickey Kashtan of the Fearless Heart blog, who's a nonviolent communication teacher and a wonderful mentor. And she made the point between privilege versus needs, and one of them was power versus control. And that the privilege that people will pick is control. Then they'll try to get everything in their environment to be just as it needs to be, with great anxiety, so that they can tolerate it. When she made the distinction that power is being able to have that ability and confidence to have influence in your environment so that you can move towards what suits you. And that's what power means to me, is having that choice.
Well, and I think a lot of people really conflate the two, control, influence, sort of seeing them as the same thing. What is the difference for you?
I think control is trying to have everything in your grasp, and influence is being able to let go of that and seeing yourself as the moving piece, and being able to, whereas control tries to keep the bad at bay, where power feels like I can beckon what I need to me.
So, kind of building off of that, what in general have been your experiences interacting with or using this sort of power? And kind of related to that, do you feel that being a woman has caused you to experience power any differently?
I feel like being a woman and having power, and even just as this interview was put together, women in power, that it seemed like those two don't tend to go together. But the truth is, in my whole experience and seeing women in my life, it's that idea that I am useful but not important. And that's been an exquisite form of gaslighting. I've been glad to learn that term too. And that if I had attempted to exercise my power, then I get shut down. And so power in my life, because I've experienced it in a harmful way from authorities that want to keep things in control, that I think even having my own power is something I had to learn to allow because of how dangerous it felt. And so it was important to have that kind of distinction that I was able to finally permit. It's one of those things that people don't want to accept. They don't want to recognize. It's kind of like the colorblind thing with racism. Oh, I don't see color. If you don't see my gender and everything that I've had to experience for it, then you aren't really seeing me. And because of that box and everybody's desire to have a sense of worth, and the way that I would get shut down if I exercised my power was that I had to learn, in order to get a sense of self-worth, was to give it away. Mm-hmm. Give it away so I could feel worthwhile, because that was the only way I could get approval. Because if I was powerful, I would be considered a threat. And so I had to settle for being an asset. Mm-hmm. And acquiesce my ability to be assertive.
So now you talk about that in the past tense. You gave the power away. Mm-hmm. What was your turning point in either discovering that you had the power to be your own asset, really, or reclaiming your power for yourself?
It would probably, there's been a lot of turning points and a lot of transitions in my life, but I think maybe perhaps the most important, or at least the most recent, was when I took this job just this year. I've only been there for less than 3 months, but I think it was the final thing for me to let go of in my life, or move towards, that had things that had seemed prescribed to me of how to live my life. So it happened to be that with this job, it was like getting a chance for a different environment by other women in power, and give myself permission to say yes to that when I had felt pretty broken down by a lot that had happened, where it felt like I couldn't continue to move on, and maybe I wasn't good enough for something different. But this gave me the chance to see what my power is. I didn't have to maintain control. I could maintain control that I could move towards, even if it wasn't a guarantee, that it was a possibility. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, is from Seeking Alaska. It says, I go to seek a great perhaps.
Mm-hmm. So what gave you the courage to seek that great perhaps? It's a great quote. But there is a lot of risk there, that maybe prior to this, job change, you might not have taken on. What made it the right moment for you to do that? Like, what was the kind of like almost the turning point behind that turning point?
There's several with that too. I'm a social worker, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and it took me a long time to get my license. Well, not a long time, actually, short compared to some durations, but I think everything just started falling into place. I think I had a significant change of loss, and then I finally decided I need to really take care of this and do this for me. I got my license. I reconnected with an old friend. That friend told me about this job, and I vacillated for a long time in between and struggled and thought, am I making the right choice? But I think it was all of that falling into place and making that decision not to live in fear anymore, that it is worth the risk. It's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it, that I don't have to live in scarcity and certainty. So I think getting that for myself and having a connection, I could be vulnerable enough to share my life isn't quite the way it is, and someone to reach back and say, I have an idea, and give myself permission to do that. It was this series of everything I said: vulnerability, risk, comfort, connection, hope.
So that social connection, that friend who had made that suggestion, really did kind of help move this decision along for you, though, would you say?
Yeah, because it's weird. We've talked about it, that we're different versions of each other. So to kind of hear it from my own mirror, I think makes a difference. To feel that kind of like have that person hear my longing, and then for her to go move into belonging, from longing to belonging. So yeah, it was a big deal. So
now that person obviously had an effect on your confidence levels to pursue your dreams, and make some changes that helped you feel more fulfilled within your life. What other inspirations and supports have been really influential to you, and helpful in achieving your personal and professional goals?
Well, I think it's really been all these other women, all these other independent women that quit systems that weren't working for them, women that I've called Valkyries. Because for a time I did live with some other women that were very, very fierce, but also needing to survive. And we created our own little community. And I'm not there anymore, but it has made a lasting difference. So I think that was a huge place for me to bud or create a cocoon and take risks from. And I think that's been it. Also, my mom, though my mom, of course, is very different than me, there's those things that we share in common. And I just see how much she has, and that I guess I want to carry that forward maybe farther than she had been able to, and that things can be different. And it has been worth it to be independent and free and stable and make decisions out of hope and curiosity instead of fear. So yeah, those women, including my friend that told me about the job, she is an independent, fierce woman.
Now, do you think at the time these women knew that they were having this influence on you and vice versa, or was it just kind of an organic?
I made sure to tell them.
You made sure to tell them that?
Yeah, I feel like I don't think we hear enough from other people what they mean or who they are, even if that's just to us. And I think everybody needs to know how they are to you, even if it's something as small as like, oh, I like your lanyard. Like it matters. It reminds me of an old coworker. She said, because I would tell people what they would say. So another strong, independent, fierce woman, when I told her what I thought of her from what I perceived and experienced of her, and she said, they say in my family to give me my flowers today. Don't wait until a funeral. And I guess that's how I practice. So I hope that we can all just keep lifting each other up the way that I have been. And I'm very grateful for that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and your experiences. I think that we've all certainly picked up maybe a few new ways to think about our personal power and maybe reflect on some of the things that we're doing within our own lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.